Now, Alice Springs and the youth crime crisis is creating concern right around the country, but nowhere more than Alice Springs. Parts of the Alice were in lockdown yesterday after a mob attacked local businesses and cars. It forced dramatic action now from the Northern Territory government. They've imposed a youth curfew.
The scenes that we saw last night and the scenes that we saw yesterday afternoon absolutely warrant us stepping up and stepping in around a curfew from 6 p.m. at night till 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, that starts tonight for 2 weeks. So the curfew, the youth curfew, about to be imposed in Alice Springs tonight. Let's cross to the Alice now and catch up again with business owner Darren Clarke. Good to talk to you, Darren. Now, I don't know what your reaction is to this, but my guess would be you say you need it now, but we've seen this before. There was a crackdown a year ago to try and restore law and order, but nothing seems to happen permanently.
No, Chris, nothing happens permanently here at the moment. But look, buddy, we needed some relief. We really needed some relief here after yesterday's events, which is some of the worst that I've seen, and I've been covering this for 4 and a bit years now, mate. I've seen some horrible things. Yesterday was truly terrifying that was going on when you've got a whole town under siege. You know, businesses being smashed up, pubs being trying to break into, cars being absolutely trashed. Like, it was just terrifying to watch, mate, and it's terrifying to see the reaction of tourists and locals alike. We needed some reprieve. The NT government here must be congratulated for actually stepping in, and they've gone pretty hard here. This is an emergency situation. So they have the powers now not to only take the kids off the street, not to just, which they can't usually do, but also we have a lot of people coming in from communities causing a lot of problems, you know, adults. So they can actually now check their licences and arrest them and then remove them from town for 14 days. So it's a big, dramatic step, Chris. But my word, mate, this town needed it, because I'll tell you what, as a breaking point last night, if we hadn't got some rain last night, we had about 150 people that were fighting with police on one side of town. If the rain hadn't have come, they just set fire to a house and torched the car. If the rain hadn't have come last night, Chris, and they're on their way back into the CBD, they may well have burnt the town down last night, and I'm not exaggerating.
It is just terrible to see. It's tragic to see. We've spoken to you before, Darren, about your house being broken into, people's house being broken into while they're asleep in their beds. We've seen some of the crime and lawlessness on the streets. We've seen cars attacked and hijacked and all sorts of crime. And as you're describing yesterday, completely under siege the town. This is a wonderful, vibrant town, a tourist mecca, as you say, at its best. But when it's reduced to this, it's an absolute shame. So 2 weeks of youth curfew with these additional powers, as you say, that should calm things down and enable control to be established for 2 weeks. And especially over Easter and the school holidays, that's going to be a great thing. What elements of this plan, though, do they need to keep permanently in order to keep the situation sustainable long term? Do they need the powers to take children off the streets when they see them out at night permanently?
Look, Chris, if you drove around the streets here overnight, some nights, you've got little 8 and 7-year-old kids walking the streets, mate. That has always been my major concern. We've got to save these kids. We've got to make them safe. So I think that part of it, as you suggested there, to be able to take these children off the streets, have them in a safe spot, and keep them in a safe spot, because they can't be taken home to people that are under the influence of drugs and alcohol, that aren't caring for them, and they're not witnessing high levels of dramatic domestic violence in their households. We've got to start looking after these children, mate, because we're going to lose generation after generation here, and we can't have it. They're beautiful young children. You see the love in their eyes. We've got to save them, mate. And that's my focus here in this town, to save these kids, but to also keep this town safe. So if it takes these 58 extra police that are also down here, Chris, leave them here with batons and leave them here with shields to actually prevent this violence from happening. Because the Indigenous people of this town and the white people of this town, we've had enough. We're living in terror, we're living in anxiety, and we're living in fear. It can no longer happen, mate. So these 14 days, we just need everyone take a breath, but we need now the governments, and that's what we elect them for. The governments have to reassess what they're doing, look into the agency, make sure everyone's doing their job. If you've got a responsibility around youth in Alice Springs, around crime in Alice Springs, and you're a service provider, you must be looked into now and make sure that providing a service, looking after these children, preventing the alcohol abuse, the drug abuse, and making the streets and the homes of Alice Springs safe. It's time, Chris, we can't live like this any longer, and it is around the nation, but here, mate, we're an epicenter of it. We've got communities all around us, and they come in, and when they run amok like you've never seen, running around with crowbars and axes like yesterday and bashing into businesses. This is 2024 in the greatest nation on the planet of this earth. This is a magnificent town. Anyone that's ever been here knows that. It's the most beautiful place on earth. That's why we stay. We want more people to come, but people won't come if it's not safe. We want the place safe for the locals and the kids and for the people around Australia and the world to visit our wonderful town.
Spot on, Darren Clarke. Well said. Good luck. We'll check in with you next week. As Darren says, it's not just the curfew. They're sending 58 extra police into Alice Springs, and there's a clue there. Maybe a lot more of them should stay there permanently. We'll check back in on the Alice over coming days and next week for sure.